celebrating the power of possibility.
My name is Mark Dean, and I believe anything is possible.
This is Anything is Possible. I'm Hallerin Hilton Hill. These are great stories about great people whose lives prove possibility. And part two of my interview with Dr. Mark Dean. Thank you for being with us. And if you haven't seen the previous episode, it's available online, so you can catch up there. Dr. Dean, so we left off with you in Boca Raton, Florida. You're working for IBM. You're working on your master's. I think it was very smart to work on something in your master's that had real world relevance.
Well, fair. Obviously, I did it because I thought it'd be interesting, and it had not been done as openly, meaning there were not a lot of systems around at the time that could do this graphical interface that I was working on. So I felt good about it. I mean, like I said, I learned a lot.
Did you run into any prejudice?
Yes. I mean, it was, given when I grew up, it would be hard not to have run into some prejudice. I had some challenges, let me say, early on in my career because people didn't believe that blacks could do what I was doing. I mean, it was unusual, let me say it that way. Like I said, my grandfather would say, well, they just don't know any better. You just need to show them that you can and teach them that, yes, that color doesn't define you as far as your abilities. It's just a part of you, and they need to understand that you can be what you want to be, and they can't block. And so I had some moments of times when people tried to block, and I just didn't allow them to block. There's always a way around a blockage, so you just got to find that way around it.
What was the turning point with the PCAT? What happened in the lab where you said, oh, whoa, yeah?
Well, I think it was not me per se that had the epiphany that this was special. It was people around me, my management, and other people I was working with that said, wow, this, I think we can, this is going to work. This can be a system that we can use. And I had some good management that were confident in me and allowed me to build what I thought was the right thing to build. Little did they know that they gave me just enough freedom to do some things that became successful. And I think that was part of leadership. They didn't see me as, per se, somebody that couldn't. They actually saw me as somebody that could. And I lived up to their expectations, and it worked. And we had a good run for a long time.
That ISA to me is probably one of the greatest things in the history of computing, because that's what allows scale, is if everybody gets on a standard.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it's the greatest thing ever in computing. I would say it established a standard that others could build to, and it opened the industry to lots of possibilities. That was that, and allowing people to build the exact same thing and call it IBM PC compatible established industry. That's what created what we now know as the PC industry, and where companies were selling literally millions of systems. That particular interface and the way that we enabled the industry to build the exact same things and establish that compatibility, that allowed customers to buy from different companies.
How old were you when all of this breaks?
I was in my late 20s.
Dang.
Yeah, wasn't that something?
So you were on these patents as well?
Yes, yeah, me and a few other people. Denny Muller was my partner in crime, and the 3 of the 9 patents that kind of set the standard We had fun. It was fun, actually. We didn't know. I'll tell you, we didn't know. We thought, IBM sold big machines at the time.
Yeah.
They sold mainframes, right? That was their deal. And this was a little computer that you could buy and put in your home.
Right.
So we thought, okay, we might get lucky and sell 200,000 of these, and then we'll be done. We'll build the next thing, whatever it is. Little did we know everybody wanted one, and a lot of people wanted to build the exact same thing and make money selling their machines as well. And it took off. I mean, we just said, wow.
Is there a number? How many?
Well, IBM ended up selling millions. The industry sold tens of millions. So it was a lot bigger than what we had ever expected.
All right, so let's take a break. When we come back, I want to ask you, what happens to a man that has a patent on something like that? I've never asked that question. More in a moment on Anything is Possible.
Possibility powered by Pilot Flying J, Covenant Health, Home Federal, and the Knoxville News Sentinel. Coming up.
I felt like I had a little bit of a chance to expose to the minority community what's possible.
Welcome back to Anything is Possible. What would you do if you had the patent, or you were on the patent for the IBM PC? This architecture is sold out tens of millions, and dadgummit, your name is on the patent. Well, the guy whose name is on that patent is here in studio with me, Dr. Mark Dean. So tell me about what it's like to be a billionaire, Elon Musk over there.
I wish I knew. You'll have to call Elon and Bill Gates and some of those guys, because they know better than me.
So your name's on the patent. I mean, you were one of the creators of what became the IBM PC and the architecture that allows it to scale, right?
Yeah.
What happens when your name is on that kind of a patent?
Well, you keep getting paid by the company you work for. They promote you and give you positions of leadership, and that's your job. And that's when you work for a large company, and they're paying you to do that job.
So no royalties or residual.
That's all right.
Hey, but you know what?
That's all right.
You know what? I've spent a lot of time in the music industry and I've worked on films, and there's something called work for hire. Mm-hmm. You have a piece of intellectual property that was contracted as you're working for the company, and it was a work for hire, and they own the intellectual property, and they pay you to do the work. Is it similar?
It's exactly that way. And you have to realize I wouldn't have gotten to do what I did unless I was in IBM. I mean, they made this possible. They put me in a position to innovate. Without their help, they have the brand. The brand made this product key. I mean, people wanted a piece of IBM. They could buy a system that was IBM. So I understand that I wouldn't have had this opportunity unless I was there.
Right.
Okay. So because of that, they paid me to do what I did. They compensated me pretty well, and they let me grow in the company. And they were successful in their own right.
So after that, after the moon landing, what do you do? I know a lot of astronauts, after they do something incredible like that, it's like, what do I do after this? What happened after that?
Well, after just about 10 years, my schedule I had, my set of goals, it was time to get a PhD. I had to get my PhD before I hit 30. That was my goal.
Wow.
And so I told them, I said, okay, I think it's time. I want to get my PhD. They said, okay, well, if you want to do that, one, you've got to go to a prominent school and we'll pay your way.
Wow.
I said, cool, all right. So I applied at MIT, Stanford, Caltech, University of Illinois. And I got into all of them. They all said, okay, especially since, it's a free ride for them. And I picked Stanford because they were doing some work in the area I wanted to work in. And again, I walked in the door saying, here's what I wanted to do. Here's the idea I have. And I've already done some work in this area, but I only have 3 years to get done. if I can't get done in 3 years, I'm out of here. All right? I can't spend more than 3 years. Fortunately, I had a professor that said, okay, we'll try it. Most people don't do it in 3 years. It's usually a 6-year exercise. But I'll work with you and we'll target 3 years. And he helped me. I had a couple of professors that helped me. And I think because I walked in with a pretty clear idea of what I wanted to do, we made it happen. I got done in 3 years. And
So your grandfather lives to see you get the PhD.
he does.
What did he think of that?
He was just elated. He thought that was the greatest thing ever. I mean, he was so proud that he had a grandson that had achieved what he just wouldn't have had the opportunity to achieve. And I told him, I said, the only reason I was able to do this was because of the path he and my parents and my great grandmother had set for me. I mean, they cleared the way, right? Without all of their efforts, I wouldn't have been able to do any of that. And I also told him that, and I told you earlier that if my father, my grandfather, my mother, my grandmother had grown up during the times I grew up, they would have achieved 10 times what I achieved. I mean, they clearly were much better at doing stuff than me. I truly feel that way. And so they would have achieved great things if they had grew up. So like I said, I felt it was expected of me.
When you finished at IBM, what level had you attained? Did you become a fellow, and did you?
I did make IBM fellow in 15 years. That was my goal. And I was fortunate to have achieved enough to get there. I had become a vice president, and my last major position was Chief Technology Officer for the Middle East and Africa.
So you traveled the world.
I traveled a lot. We've got a little world map on our wall, and we put pins in every place I've traveled. Yeah, it's got a lot of pins in it. That's right.
So
too many pins.
You come back to academia. That was another part of.
That was the plan.
Yeah. So what'd you do?
Well, I let people know that I was interested in becoming a professor, and I had some options. I considered a historically black college, Howard.
Yeah.
That would have been great. And Georgia Tech, and there was a couple of schools. But I talked to the dean of the College of Engineering at UT, and Wayne Davis, and he said, well, we'd love to have you back. Of course, my parents were still alive in the city I grew up in. And I had bought some property on the lake. And so the only challenge was talking my wife into moving to Jefferson City. I mean, she's from Boston.
Yeah, she's a big city.
She's
fantastic too.
She's beautiful, actually. She's really one of the reasons I'm where I am today. And she gets lots of credit. So she said, okay, I'll try it. As long as we have a travel budget, I'm good. Little did we know that she has gotten into so many things and loves it, that it turned out to be the right decision for us. And so she's achieving now, she's happy, and so she made it all possible.
So you end up as dean.
Interim dean. I mean, that's okay.
Dean.
Okay.
I bet in the interim you had a lot of dean work to do.
Yeah, that was a fun job. I mean, that was a great time. I enjoyed that. Wayne Davis had moved on to be interim chancellor, and so he asked me to be interim dean, and I said, great. And great team, great college. I've had a few what I would call just memorable responsibilities. Of course, the IBM PC was high on the list. It's kind of number one. When I managed the Almaden Research Center in California, that was great. 400 researchers doing great innovations, and I got to manage them all. I mean, that was super. And being Dean of the College of Engineering, that's the third one on my list of great positions. Just wonderful people, great opportunities, and I felt like I had a little bit of a chance to expose to the black community, the minority community, what's possible. I mean, this is possible.
Let's take a break. When we come back, I want to talk life lessons. My guest is Dr. Mark Dean. More in a moment. My guest is Dr. Mark Dean. 35-year plan. Judging you against plan, how'd you do?
I did pretty good. There are moments where I was off a little bit. I think I probably retired from IBM a couple of years after I originally planned, but I was CTO of Middle East and Africa, so it's hard to complain. I started my academic career a little bit off from my original plan, like I said, a couple of years, but that was okay. Like I said, these are just mileposts that I had placed, and I could judge how I was doing. But all in all, I think I'm happy with the results. I'd probably do it the same way. If I had to do it over again, I'd do it the same way.
Let's talk life lessons. First, what have you learned about education and getting a great education? How do you do it?
Education is key in many cases to awareness. It's amazing how when you get a little bit of knowledge, how much things come clear to you, how perceptions are either proven or disproven, right? Facts are important, and education can lead to facts. And that's why my wife and I are big advocates of education, that education opens up opportunity. That without that knowledge, it's hard to know what might be possible. And so my wife is she has a nonprofit that is focused on mostly K through 6 graders reading, right? It's kind of a summer program, and so she's high on education. I'm obviously high on education. I tell my students that, undergraduate degree is good. And in fact, we shouldn't just assume everybody is made for college. Right? There's a lot of great jobs, technician type jobs, jobs that people can get that don't have to have a 4-year degree. So don't just assume that a 4-year degree is necessary. It's nice, and I promote that, but there's a lot of ways to get an, quote, education. You can be an artisan. That's an education, right? So I'm proud of anyone that says, I want to do X because I love it. I want to do welding. I want to be a plumber. I want to be a policeman. I want to be something. And they achieve that goal, and they're successful at that. And that education to support that was key to make that possible.
What have you learned about creativity?
I would say that my creativity comes from my vivid imagination. I believe anything you can imagine is possible. There's usually only 3 key elements to it. It's money, time, and risk. So if you're willing to take the risk, you can find enough funds, and you have the time, there's nothing you can't do, right? We want to go to Mars. Okay, yeah, that's money, time, and risk. Those are the key elements of that. If we want to put that investment in and make it happen, we can make it happen. And I still believe that. There's still learning requires some time. That's usually research. Funding is obviously the money to do the research and discover. And we've got to be willing to say, yes, it's possible, because it's scary.
Yes, it's possible.
Yes, it's possible. It's that risk, you got to be willing to take a chance and know that I may not get there my first try. I'm going to write down everything I learned, and I'm not going to do it the same way the second time, because my grandfather says, yep, you can make mistakes, just don't make the same mistake twice.
What have you learned about leadership?
Well, one thing I've learned is I've never stopped learning about leadership. It's a funny thing. I always thought once I got out of college, I knew everything I needed to know. I'm good. Right? I didn't need to learn anything else. I'm good to go. I can just keep doing what I learned to do. Little did I know that, daggone it never stops. And I'm still learning stuff. It just freaks me out that there's still so much I have to learn, and I still don't know it all. I want to know it all. I just don't know it all.
Keep learning.
I just keep learning.
Final question for you. You and I can only have one car.
Come on. No, that's not allowed. No, who wrote that rule? Yo,
we're down to our last car. We can only have one car. The one car. The one car for you, because you're a car guy. You build them. You love them. I love them too. The one car.
Oh gosh, no, that's too hard a choice.
Too hard?
Well, there's a car, they made beautiful cars in the late 50s and 60s, I have to say. They're just beautiful cars. There's BMW made a Gullwing, SL Gullwing. That probably is, see, you caught me because the E-Type Jaguar, that's a beautiful car too, convertible.
Yeah. Oh. Is that the one that Prince Harry and Meghan drove?
I mean, it's long nose, short back, convertible back. I mean, it wasn't the perfect car, not near the perfect car, but it's just beautiful. So, unfortunately, I gave you two, but that's having no limits, right?
Anything is possible.
Anything's possible.
Dr. Mark Dean, thank you for being inspiring. You bristle with possibility. Your whole presence feels like yes.
Good.
Right? And so I want to thank you for spending this time with us and for being a great role model and ambassador of possibility. And love and appreciate you, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you, and I get to come back and interview you because anything's possible.
Anything is possible.
That's right.
We'll see you next time.